This is Haitao from Laang, and you are listening to The Dan Chan Show.
Well, this evening I'm pleased to be joined by Haitao from Taiwanese black metal outfit Laang. How are you doing this evening, my friend? And did I say Laang correctly? Is that right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You're pretty close. Lang or Long is perfectly fine, honestly. Whatever's the easiest to say.
Right, cool, very cool. And it's and you're in Tennessee, but you're originally from Taiwan. You've been to the UK. You're in Tennessee. How long are you in America for?
I've been in America for somewhere between 4 and 5 years now.
Wow.
As an international student of all reasons. But originally from Geelong in Taiwan. Did some time in Liverpool in the United Kingdom, which was wonderful, and hoping to get back to Taiwan quite soon.
And what are you studying?
Neuroscience, actually. I'm
Wow.
a bit of a biologist, but I'm sure
Wow.
that's a bit more nerdy than
Wow.
your typical black metal person, but I
That's
like it.
incredible. Well, I think it all, to be honest with you, I think it all goes hand in hand because I think the black metal community is very, when you say nerdy, but it's very intelligent as well. And I think I think it goes with it for me.
I can understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's get into the music. Now you just discuss, amongst other things, of course, your brand new album. Now another word I'm gonna have to make sure I get right. Is it Riluo? Riluo?
So that's honestly probably the hardest word. The
Yeah,
way I would
it is.
describe it
It is
is
very hard to say.
no, totally understandable. It means sunset. The way to say it is lo is
Urlo.
probably the simplest way.
And that
Erlo,
would be
Erlo.
Chinese Mandarin, right? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, and that track, sorry, that this album is out on the 24th of November, which is it's not long away, really. How excited are you to be getting this out?
I am excited. I'm really excited. It's been a long time coming. Truth be told, I recorded this album over a year ago at this point. So it's just a matter of finishing mixing and the production and promotion, coordinating with everything behind the scenes is it's a long process, but it's been exciting. It's something I've been really emotionally close to and something I'm excited to share with everyone. So yeah, I'm really excited for the release.
For sure. And I think your music is awesome for me. I love what you're doing. And you released the title track as a single recently and also a track called, another word I'm going to have to, I'm going to try, Bayou. Bayou?
Value.
Not far off. And then how has the
Not far off.
response been? How's the response been for those tracks?
It's been really, really positive actually so far. Value in particular, we had great response for it. Seems like people have been responding really nicely, sending great messages, leaving nice comments,
Yeah.
and it's been really nice to see. Urlo has been a bit quieter, but honestly, it's almost an uncharacteristic track in some ways, where it's got more of the kind of doom kind of sounding
Yeah.
metal, a little less but blast beat heavy.
Yeah.
But still an important track to me. So I felt it was important to release. So, but so far, so good.
How do you find the time to do your obviously very intense studies alongside such very intense music? How do you find the time to bring them two together?
I don't sleep a lot is probably the best answer, to be honest. Yeah, yeah, I work 12 hours a day and come home, and if I have the energy, then yeah, I'll
Get on with the music.
record, write something new, and I'll see what I can do.
Wow. Now, I want to get into the history of the band later, but for now, how did you go about writing this album? How did you've already said you did it about a year ago. Does it still feel quite fresh to you? What's the chronological order of this new album?
So this new album, it started originally. I was working as a guitar instructor, kind of on the side, just to get some more
Yeah.
income coming in to help fund the album. And every time a student wouldn't come, I'd just say, "Well, great, here's an hour that I can just work on writing." And
Yeah.
a lot of the riffing for the album was written during that time. Honestly, it was
Right.
just structured time that I was getting paid to write music, and I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And where it really came together was kind of by unfortunate circumstance. I got COVID sometime last summer,
Yeah.
and basically I just said, I'm never going to be home this much ever again. I'm just going to spend this entire 2 weeks that I'm sick
Mm.
just recording. So
Mm.
everything but the vocals. I couldn't do the vocals, but
Yeah, sure.
instrumentally, everything was just recorded during that two week period. And it does feel recent in the sense that not a lot changed. I didn't really go back and change anything other than just recording vocals and changing production. But it's been something that I've been sitting on for a while, I guess, and it still feels exciting to me.
I see. Now you really feel the emotion in the music. Well, I can really feel it's palpable. How do you get to that place to write like that and better still perform it? Is it like somewhere you have to go to do it in your head, or do you kind of does it come naturally?
I think it's it's a place that I don't like to go, I think, and
Yeah.
I think something that's really part of why I always save the vocals for last is that's always the more kind of emotionally taxing
Yeah.
part of the recording and the writing process. For the instrumentals, I mean, some of it's fun, honestly. It doesn't all have to come from a horrible place. It can also just be something I thought sounded nice.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think it's something that is tangible enough for me that I don't really need to force myself to go into a different place. I think I'm close enough already usually that
Yeah.
um it can be flexible, I suppose.
So tell me about the lyrical themes, and as I believe you make them quite personal to yourself, don't you?
I do, yeah. It is very personal, and I'm usually quite literal in my writing, I think. But
Yeah.
kind of a theme that I tend to use is a metaphor of an ocean or some kind of body of water, because kind of exploring the sensations that I've experienced and much more. I think it's the best way for me to kind of externalize that
Yeah.
sensation and that thought, and so that's something that comes up quite a lot. So lyrically, there's a lot of mentions of water, but on this album in particular, it kind of combines a couple different pieces where there's discussion of kind of the incident, so it's to say, but there's also still discussion of the recovery and the emotional trajectory and kind of just the struggles that now years away from what happened, there's still an impact, and it's something that
Sure.
every day's a process.
Sure. Now, sticking to this album, how do you think that you've evolved from the last album? And this is another word. Is it Jin Ten?
Singtang.
Singtang. Oh, never got that. How do you
uh,
feel you've
okay,
evolved since
let,
Singtang?
let, let me let me make it simple. Sin like sinful, and
Sin.
tongue like a tongue in your mouth.
Oh,
Sin
Tong.
tongue.
So Sintong. Right. Okay.
That,
Sintong.
that's that's kind of an easy way to do it in English.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that album was almost exclusively based on recovery and kind of the depression that comes with that. And so,
Mm.
musically, that was very much more of a kind of depressive metal album
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And moving forward onto Riluo now, our new album, it's something where I got to kind of explore many more sides. It didn't have to be kind of emotionally put into just one position, whereas the other albums were very, very featured on just one component. Now, since this is many sides the of the emotional coin, so to say, I guess,
Yeah.
there's there's just a range, I suppose, where I can have more exploration of different ways of going in black metal, so to say. There could be
Mm.
more blast beats when I want them. There could be
Yeah.
less when I want to represent something else. And kind of that musical evolution, so to say, I think has become more flexible and something that I can do what just feels right, I
I
think.
understand. I understand. So, as I mentioned, and I would like to find out how the band and project started. I know it's a sensitive subject for you, but if you wouldn't mind telling the story for me, for context for our listeners, would you be happy doing that?
Yeah, I can tell kind of a shortened,
Yeah.
kind of sanitized version.
Yeah. Sure.
So many years ago now, luckily, I was in short just returning to my car in a car park, and there were two people there, and the memory of the incident is kind of hazy, um, part from time, part from blocking, part from the damage, but um. I was on the ground. I'd been shot. Um, the upper right side of my head was essentially just shattered. And I am exceedingly lucky to be alive.
Mm.
Just by stroke of luck, the damage was more so to the skull than anything else.
Mm.
And but there was a long recovery that came from this, and the sensation of like quite literally bleeding out and
Mm.
briefly being, at least in the medical sense, dead. My heart stopped. Was horrible, and there was, I called it like visions of like an other world or something. I'm not sure what the best way to put it in English is for the first album, but have now maybe called it more hallucinations. But just it was not even like vision so much as just an emotional feeling
Mm.
of just being so alone and isolated, um, and but just so unsafe.
Mm.
Like it was a metaphor I use a lot in the lyrics is this feeling of being in the middle of an ocean, and
Mm.
you are so far from land, you can't ever make it back to land, but there's this feeling that something's stalking you and it's coming closer, and it was just this very internal dread feeling, which is probably just the experience of death, if we're
Yeah.
being honest, but
Yeah.
it 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 left an impression, and since every album has been a stage of trying to work through my recovery, essentially.
And so, yeah, I was going to say, so how long was from you recovering to a point where you wanted to start doing, I gather that you start doing music from that. Is that what made you start performing and want
I
to do something?
the inspiration for this band in particular absolutely was entirely inspired by this. I'd had some crappy bands that did nothing other than just some shit local. I don't know if I can swear. Some
Go
bad
for it.
local shows beforehand, but nothing serious. I mean, this was something where I did want to do something serious. This was something that meant something to me, and I wanted to really put my heart and soul into it, to be cliche, and so that was my inspiration to really do this. And um initially, just honestly more for marketing than anything, I made it sound like it was more recent. Like
Mm.
I had this incident and was immediately making this band. The fact is, I couldn't get out of bed for months. It was a bit more distant in truth. But within maybe a year and a half, I want to say, of the incident, I felt to the point where I could externalize what had happened. I didn't just have to bottle it up, and I was still not fully comfortable talking about it, but more comfortable talking about
Yeah.
my experience and doing something with that.
And I appreciate you mentioning, talking about it tonight. I really do. Now, how cathartic is the music for you then now? Is because obviously you're carrying on kind of like the theme, the personal theme through it. So is it still going from that? Are you still taking from that first album, from that experience right up to now?
Very much so. It's something that I see recovery as a daily process, and that does get easier as time goes on. But some days are easier and harder than others. But
Sure.
um, every album so far, at least, has been pulled solely from that experience
Yeah.
and everything that's come with it.
Yeah.
The first album explicitly being the event, the second being where I was at with recovery, and this one now being kind of years later, looking back and reflecting on the incident, reliving the components that I wasn't comfortable talking about before, about my experience, and a bit of where I'm at with my recovery now,
Mm.
which there's some commentary as well as I think something many survivors of anything, honestly, whether it's physical violence or
Mm.
addiction or abuse, anything, often experience is there's this very alienating
Yeah.
feeling that can come with it, and
Yeah.
some of that is implicated in this album as well.
Wow. So you started alone. You started it as a project. What stage did you decide to bring others in and to help you, and how how good was it to have other people to bounce off? Is that how you was with new people in the band? Did you write together, or did you just bring them in to perform?
It's been kind of a combination. So it was shortly after Sintang was released, our second album was released, that I first started reaching out to other musicians. And this was partly because it's hard to run a whole band yourself. It's a lot of work for one person, especially this is around the time I was starting this PhD program, and I was just too busy to do everything. And there's also people who know much more than I do. And one person in particular who I wanted to contact is now still a bassist, Willie, is an incredible musician, but also a very, very intelligent music businessman. He runs his own recording studio in Taiwan. His band, Bloody Tyrant, Baojun, is doing great, starting to break into the international scene. And he knows just so much that I really benefited from his knowledge. As far as the writing, it was something that I still took the main component of, and then I just kind of, sent demos over to the other musicians, and they would, add their parts, or maybe if I'd pre-written kind of maybe an idea for it, they'd build on that idea and then kind of work it in.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've still remained the main writer for this.
Sure. Now, I want to go into Taiwan a little bit and find out about, how did you find metal in Taiwan? Was what got you there in the first place? What made you progress to a more extreme style? Where did it start for you?
So the metal scene in Taiwan is it's small. It's quite small, but it's very passionate, I think is how I'd best describe it. Is we kind of have the usual venues. There's this very common one in Taipei called Revolver, and it's quite small, but it's got a great atmosphere. They're great about bringing bands through, and it was just a very fun atmosphere. I think my first revelation of it's not just these Western bands that are cool. It's Taiwanese bands are cool too. Was really Thonic is a big inspiration for probably every single Taiwanese metal band. Anyone who says otherwise is probably lying. They were kind of the first to show these other musicians, hey, our music is cool, and people in other countries are interested in listening to it sometimes. And so that was a huge inspiration to really try this. I'd seen them in it was either between 2010 and 2012 perform, and it just, I don't know if I'd say it was life changing because that seems dramatic, but it was this just great experience. I had so much fun, and it was so cool seeing these components of Taiwanese and other Asian culture, like erhu being played while someone's playing tremolo picked guitar leads, and someone's having blast beats. Like, it was just this great cultural fusion that I was inspired by it, very much inspired by it.
And I saw that the band Mjork from Norway. Do you know them, Mjork? They played in Taipei last week, and I was like, wow, there must be a scene going on, because for them to go all the way from Norway to Taiwan is a long way to do one or two shows, and they had to sell out shows.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. I've actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I've been seeing all these pictures of all my friends back in Taipei, especially posting photos with the band and at the show. And these venues aren't huge, but they sell these out. People are excited. I mean, it's always something we laugh about is, bands say they're doing a world tour, by which they mean, part of the United States and half of Europe. So we get excited when they come visit us.
Of course. It's amazing. Who's the biggest band that's played in Taiwan? Obviously Metallica must have played there, and bands like that.
That's a great question. Honestly, Metallica was huge. I remember, I think Singapore was more excited about Metallica than we were, to be honest.
Really?
I remember from the moment they landed at the airport, people were posting photos online. So I'd say, Metallica's got to be, for our whole Milk Tea Alliance countries. I think they're probably the biggest that's come.
Yeah. So shows, etc. What's happening to follow up the album? You obviously, I was going to say, do you get out of Taiwan often? But obviously, you had a US tour last year, I believe. How was that?
We did. It was wonderful. Honestly, I would go as far as to say that was probably the best experience of my life.
Wow.
I had a phenomenal time, and we were also lucky enough to not lose money, which I think
Good,
is
good.
rare. I mean, we didn't make money, but that's fine. I fully expected
Yeah,
to come back
cover your costs.
in
That's
debt.
it. Yeah, yeah.
But no, it was fantastic. Everything came together very, very quickly. We did have to get some live musicians because not all of our members could make the trip out. So we borrowed some members from the other band we were touring with, and they were phenomenal musicians. Learned very quick. There was great chemistry, and yeah,
Brilliant.
we had a great time. It was phenomenal. The only part that was unfortunate was in the last couple of days, the drummer that at this point both bands were sharing got COVID, so
Oh,
uh, we could
gutted,
not play the last couple of shows, unfortunately.
gutted, gutted. So, what's a show
Gutted.
like? What's your what's a Yang show like? You know, what can we expect from it?
I think high energy is absolutely the goal. I remember Willie, our bassist, uh, telling me at one point after our first show, like, don't give 100% every single night. You'll burn yourself out on this tour. And I remember telling him that wasn't 100%. I just have
Yeah.
such an emotional this is not me trying to self-aggrandize or anything.
Oh
Like, I
no.
just have such an emotional investment in the music that I think it maybe just comes across as a bit, maybe even exaggerated sometimes. But so definitely high energy. And really, we do want the musicianship to be as good as possible too, though. We don't want it just to be, fast and chaotic and energetic and everyone say, like, okay, they played a lot of notes, but most were wrong. So we do try to make sure it sounds good at the same time. So definitely energy and as good professionalism as we can is definitely what we strive for. For
Yeah.
future tours, though, we're really trying to look into ways to increase the showmanship, so to say.
Yeah.
Um, which really came out the very first show we played on that tour was in Boston, and kind of like the greatest and worst thing happened was I broke three guitar strings halfway through the set,
God.
and I couldn't bring a backup guitar across country lines. Like, that was just unrealistic. So I didn't have backup. So I just said, okay, we're going to make the best of this, and just put down the guitar and jumped into the pit for the rest of the show, just doing vocals only. And it was phenomenal. It was so much fun.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing. I
um,
love things like that.
that,
So,
that's the hope, is that it's fun.
so what's on the band's to-do list? You know, what would you like to do and achieve?
I think right now, big things for us is touring more places. Honestly, we've got our largest fan base as far as Spotify is concerned is in Europe,
Yeah.
and we get probably monthly messages saying, like, when are you guys coming?
Yeah.
We always have to say, as soon as we can find an agency.
Hmm.
But we would love to tour in Europe, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd like to do a return to the US as well and actually complete it
Yeah.
this time. And we haven't actually done a major Asian tour. I mean, we've done
Mm.
some things around, like, Taiwan, but there's other countries we'd love to play in. Like, Thailand has a phenomenal metal scene. Malaysia has just, their hardcore scene is insane.
Yeah.
And Japan, of course, is phenomenal. So there's all these places that we'd love to play as well. But on top of that, I think an important thing for us is just trying to think of the best words for it. I think just community and
Yeah.
just overall growth of to be able to do these things, we have to be able to effectively reach people. We have to have, people who want to hear it, is the fact of it. So we want to, at the same time, keep working towards making the
Yeah.
best music we can, and, do what we can to make it happen.
Of course. Now, what current bands are you into? Who would you like to, realistically, who would you like to jump on a tour with, maybe?
Realistically, I I'll go by kind of countries. That might be easier. In Europe, absolutely, Harakiri for the Sky, I think, would be
I
a
knew you
great
were going to
one.
say, I knew you were going to say that. I had a feeling, seriously, I've had them on the show before. They're fantastic. And I had a feeling you were going to say that.
They are, yeah, they're a great inspiration. As far as I've been told, they sound like they're great people, and yeah, the musicianship is great. And what they do
Yeah.
is something that when I first heard their album, Trauma was the first time I heard it. I was like, this is something I haven't really heard before,
Mm.
and some partly because I took inspiration from it, but there's been comparisons drawn between
Yes.
our music in some ways,
Yeah,
and I
I
think
can see
that's
that.
a comparison that I'll welcome. And yeah, I think that'd
Mm.
be great. As far as more North American bands, I think they're out of Canada, but Panzerfaust
Yeah, no, yeah,
is
yeah,
a band who musically I just find fascinating.
yeah.
They're a more recent discovery for me, but there's a lot of things they do that just scratch an itch
I
that
like it.
I've had.
I like
So
it.
that would be wonderful. And then in Asian countries, of course, we'd love to tour with Thonic. That'd
Mm.
be wonderful.
Yeah, of course, of course. Can't let you go without mentioning that you received a cultural award for your last album, and your music has been included in Hollywood films and video games. That must feel good to hear your music interpreted that way. What was it like receiving an award, and also how did you get the tracks into films and games?
So yeah, that was an incredible thing that happened, and I'm so grateful for it. The funny thing is, for the cultural award, we didn't even submit or to anything. They didn't even tell us. We were told by someone else who saw it announced somewhere,
That's very
and we
cool.
were like, "Oh, cool, awesome! That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you." So that was really really interesting to experience and very very rewarding, especially for a first album. As far as the films and video games, that was something that was partly by stroke of luck of my day job, so to say. But also there's some great metalheads in filmmaking apparently.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so in addition to being a PhD student, I do actually write movie soundtracks, video game soundtracks, things like that. And so in situations like that, sometimes, especially in horror movies, there's there's sometimes scenes that'll come on and the director will say something of like, there might actually be some merit for something metal here. Do you have anything? And I say, well, I don't want to necessarily just promote my own band immediately. So I make some other suggestions too. But I say, I've already got a fully produced song. We could just, drop in
Yeah,
an instrumental version of this here. And
yeah,
a couple of times they said yes. I think the most interesting one was it was this movie called Antidote. And it was this horror movie, and there's a scene where this person gets his tongue ripped out. And one of our songs played over that scene, and I thought that
wow.
was fantastic.
Amazing.
Um,
Must be great
and
to
as for
see.
the yeah, and as far as the video games, that's been something of people have just reached out and basically said, "Hey, can we use this?" And we will always say yes, of course.
What kind of games?
There's been a number of kind of Metroidvania, kind of platform and action type games.
Yeah,
Usually, these are indie games for the most
yeah,
part.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but more on the funny side, we made an appearance in a hentai game,
Right. Okay.
um, which is funny enough. I feel weird saying this, but I've written the soundtrack for 6 hentai games now.
Wow.
They
Wow.
just that's kind of I don't know if I'd say that's my niche, but that's something that has come up enough times that I'm kind of starting to scratch my head a bit.
Yeah.
Of these studios just reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you make the soundtrack?" And the funny thing is, they don't want the soundtrack you'd expect. They want like the planets colliding, just like epic
Right.
orchestral soundtracks. And
Yeah.
sometimes they want metal. One of the more interesting ones was they were adding this character to this one game who is like the goth girl. And they said, we want metal for this. And so that's where we made an appearance.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, what's the future? Now, I'm thinking all I'm doing is I'm channeling. All I can think of is the Offspring and Noodles. He's a professor of something, isn't he? At a New York University, and he does the band on the side. So, what are you going to be doing? You're doing a PhD. You've got an amazing band. What's it going to be? Do 50-50?
So far, that's what it's been. Honestly, I very much feel like I'm living a double life in a lot of ways. I do personally actually find it very important to keep these components of my life separate. To be honest, most of the people I work with don't even know that I have a band. I just because it kind of comes back to the harsh reality that it's not a comfortable thing for me to talk about what happened in most
Yeah.
cases. And, a basic overview is totally fine. But, when people really delve into it, then they start like, my favorite question is when people ask to see the scars and things like that. It's something that's just, it's easier left separate for me, from my own state of mind.
Yeah.
So, well, for now, at least, it's been a double life of kind of, during the day, I do actually teach two actually undergraduate courses at a university,
Yeah.
um,
Wow.
and do research, ironically, on traumatic stress. And then I go home and try to live my music dream. So,
Mm.
I mean, going forward, yeah, I'd love to just do music full time. I think that'd be wonderful. I think it's, financially irresponsible of me to do that. But at least for now, the double life is busy, but it's working and it gives me room to not be me when I don't want to be. I
I
don't
understand.
always have to be this person trying to recover. I can be someone else. And then when I don't want to just be some stuffy academic,
Mm.
I can I can be me. So
Amazing. Amazing. Well, hi, Tao. It's been a fascinating chat. Thank you for joining me tonight. Good luck with the release. And I hope you get over to tour in Europe and I get to see you.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time and your interest.